Hello everyone, how's it going? It is Tyrnor as always, and I wanted to bring you another top whatever list. Haven't done one of these in a while. This time it is my top 6 unseen conflicts. Basically wars or battles which are known to have taken place in the lore, but have not appeared directly in World of Warcraft or been described in sufficient detail in expanded universe stuff. For example, the genocide of the Draenei by the Orcs does not fit into this list, since it's appeared in quite a few of expanded universe sources, and arguably in Warlords of Draenor, but something like, for instance, the Elemental Sundering, which was the battle where Ragnar's defeated Prince Thunderran, would fit on this list, or something like the Gorian Wars between the Orcs and the Ogres, and so on. So, without further ado, here we go. Number 6 on my list is Trag High Mountain's mission in Icecrown Citadel. The second one, not the first one. Now to explain, a few years ago, some of the creative people at Blizzard were asked why the Death Knight Trag High Mountain did not participate in the assault on Icecrown Citadel, where we took down Arthas as he promised he'd actually do. And they answered that Targ led a group of Death Knights in another assault on the Citadel on a different front, which was successful, but unfortunately the brave Tauren took an arrow to the knee. And I want to see that battle because I think it would have been cool. I don't think there's anything more to be said. Number 5 on my list would be the Defense of Nomargon. Now to clarify, there are 2 events which are so named, and I am talking about both of them. The first one was the defense of Nomargon against the Horde in the Second War, which was briefly described in Chronicle Volume 2, but not really majorly expanded upon. It was, in short, described that the gnomes barricaded themselves behind an impenetrable door and planted traps everywhere against the orcs, which proved quite successful. And, well, that would be pretty fun to see. The second one would be the defense of Nomargon against the Trogs, which was basically a desperate struggle involving all the wonders of gnomish technology as they attempted to stave off the unending tide of Trogs that invaded their city, only to ultimately fail. And of course, Gelbin Mechatork's infamous decision to irradiate his own city at the advice of Mechgineer Thermoplug, which only made a bad situation worse. I think both of these events would be interesting to witness, since gnomish technology always makes for an interesting show, and of course, while the first defense might provide for some comedy, the second defense is also a tragedy in its own right. Number 4 on my list would be the Goblin Trade Wars. Now, after the goblins liberated themselves from the trolls, they started fighting each other in a series of wars called the Trade Wars. Pretty much nothing is known about them except they involve lots of explosions and fire. Thing is, I'd like to see a conflict between goblins, since it's bound to be just a crazy explosive technology pitted against other crazy explosive technology. And sure, it's fun when the goblins point them at other things, but I'd like to see a battle of explosive sheep, or to see various goblin tinkers try to find ways to counteract each other's inventions, and so on and so forth. Number 3 on my list are the Ahn'Qiraj and Troll Wars, aka the conflict which arose between the trolls and the forces of the faceless General Kifix, which led to the disappearance of the Ahn'Qiraj Empire and the appearance of the empires of Ahn'Qiraj, Azjol-Nerub, the Mantid Empire, Zul'Gurub, Zul'Drak, and Zul'Aman. The conflict itself began after a group of trolls accidentally resurrected Kifix, nice job there, who then gathered the scattered Ahn'Qiraj across Azeroth and led them in a massive attack on the trolls. The Zandalari trolls then took charge, called upon all the other troll tribes, and led them in their counterattack, resulting in a bunch of gigantic battles between the troll armies, with mighty warriors, voodoo doctors, shadow hunters, and even several massive Loa fighting on their side, against the insectoid Ahn'Qiraj and their master, with the trolls eventually being victorious. While not much detail is known, there are still some cool individual episodes in the war, which bear mentioning. My personal favorite being how the Amani tribe hunted down Kifix to what would become the northern part of Lordaeron and slew him in a titanic battle and then built their capital, Zul'Aman, over his corpse. So yeah, I think I've pretty much made my case. Number 2 on my list would be the fall of Skyreach, which was when the Old Horde, during its rampage across Draenor, conquered the Arakoa capital of Skyreach. Now, as you may or may not know, I'm a huge fan of the Arakoa and their storylines, both in Burning Crusade and in Warlords of Draenor. The destruction of Skyreach took place after the Orcs drank the blood of Manoroth and after the destruction of Shattrath City, when basically Blackhand charged Kargath Bladefist with conquering the Arakoa as they were an important power in Draenor. Kargath took his Shattered Hand, the Burning Blade and the Dragon Maw in an all-out assault on Skyreach, resulting in a great battle, but they nonetheless failed due to the Breath of Rukmar, the Arakoa superweapon. The Orcs then reached out to the Arakoa outcasts and persuaded them to help in capturing Skyreach. They did so by sabotaging the Breath of Rukmar, allowing the Orcs to slaughter the High Arakoa, though they did then turn on the outcasts. Those High Arakoa they did not kill, they dropped off into the pools of Seath, turning them into Cursed Arakoa. All in all, it's a pretty climactic event. All things considered, it's a great battle with both sides featuring very interesting armaments and tactics, and it's also a tragic one for the Arakoa, basically an all-out genocide of their race. And I would also really like to know how the ground-based Orcs hoped to take on the flying Arakoa. Before we get to number 1, I have to quickly mention, as an honorable mention, the war against the Nightmare from the Stormrage novel. It technically doesn't fit the criteria for this list, but I think it's probably the conflict that should have been the most in World of Warcraft. It took place between Wrath and Cataclysm and basically put the whole world in danger, yet there's not even a peep about it in-game. Anyway, moving on. And number 1 is...
versus Ragnaros. I will have my revenge, dragon. I am the master here.
Number 1 on my list is the conflict between Ragnaros and Nefarian in vanilla, or rather the conflict between the Dark Horde and the Black Dragon fight against the Dark Iron Dwarves and the Fire Elementals. Now, technically speaking, this conflict does appear sort of in World of Warcraft in the sense that it is referenced at times. But take a look inside Blackrock Mountain. There are no battles being waged between the two factions. There aren't even any corpses or bloodstains to mark any such conflicts. So while it is referenced in the game, and technically speaking it's taking place in the time frame of the game, we don't actually see it. Which is a bit of a shame, since I find these two factions to be some of the more interesting ones in World of Warcraft, and they are among my favorites. And the conflict between them would be great in my opinion, pitting the ragged survivors of the Second War, probably the most battle-hardened orcs, trolls and ogres there ever are, against the ingenious and industrious Dark Iron Dwarves, not to mention the various experiments Nefarian is cooking up, or the Fire Elementals, and so on and so forth. What little has been described of the conflict say that it is a particularly bloody one, which makes me want to see it all the more. And this brings us to the end of another top whatever list. Leave any thoughts in the comments below and tell me, if you know any, what war or battle or whatever would you have liked to see either in-game or detailed more in the novel and so on. Other than that, I will see you all later. Farewell.